Daniel's Story, Chapter 10, Part A. Father sits with his legs astride me, holding on to me as if I were on a toboggan run. I hold on to the man in front of me the same way. We are in an open boxcar, traveling by train. It is night. It is snowing. The wind is fierce, but the man in front of me is a large Pole, and I am quite protected. Father's not so lucky. I'm too skinny to give him much protection from the elements. We were loaded onto these cars today after 3 months in Auschwitz-Birkenau and a long march away from the death camp. It is the middle of December. I slept most of the day, but now the cold and the terrible hunger keep me awake. We've had nothing to eat but a slice of bread and a cup of watery soup this morning. The Allies are advancing. The Russians are nearing Auschwitz, and the Germans are starting to evacuate the camp. We are being taken back to Germany, I suppose so they can continue to use us for forced labor and, of course, to kill us. They want to kill us not only because they hate and despise us, but also now because they want no one left to tell the world what happened. Then they can't be punished. But why do they think they'll be punished? After all, don't they believe what they are doing is right? They are just eradicating a vile species, like cockroaches. Surely no one would punish them for that. But no, they are terrified. Does that mean they knew all along it was wrong, and they did it anyway? Some for the love of killing and for the love of power, some because they were simply following orders with which they agreed. I am more determined than ever to live. I will live and I will bear witness against them. I will remember. I don't have my pictures anymore. Still, I can make pictures in my head. I will do that. And I will go over them now and organize these pictures so that when the time comes to tell of what happened, I will tell it clearly. They will not defeat me. I hug Father's arms closer around my chest, and I will not let them defeat Father either. I will keep him alive with the last ounce of strength in my body. I have spent 2 train trips looking at pictures, and I will do the same on this one, even if all I have are the pictures in my head. I remember how confused I was on that first trip, how terrified on the second. Now I am simply a ball of anger and fury and determination. If I die, it won't be without a fight. Everything is in pictures for me now, as if I were clicking with my camera every time I saw something. The most memorable picture of those months is the one of Erica. Father was convinced that she and Mother had gone straight to the gas chambers. I kept telling him that we couldn't be sure. For 4 weeks we were kept in quarantine. We were actually in the part of the camp called Birkenau. Auschwitz had 3 major camps: Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II, or Birkenau, and Auschwitz III, or Monowitz. Auschwitz I was the main camp. It was built of red brick buildings and housed much of the camp administration, plus some barracks for political prisoners of many nationalities. Birkenau had the gas chambers and crematoria. After you entered the gate, on the left was the women's camp. On the right were the men's camp, the quarantine camp, the Theresienstadt family camp, the gypsy camp, and the prisoners' hospital. Behind all of this was Canada, as we called it, a group of storehouses containing all the loot stolen from prisoners as they arrived. Mountains of shoes, coats, clothes, shaving brushes, even artificial limbs, all to be sorted and shipped back to Germany. Monowitz was a labor camp where German firms forced inmates to work in synthetic oil and rubber factories. Every barracks had a capo in charge, a prisoner, often a criminal, sometimes a Jew. Father made sure that the capo in charge of us knew of my skills with machinery and his skills as a carpenter and jack of all trades. When quarantine was over, some men were sent to build more barracks in Birkenau. The Nazis were so deluded many still believed they could win, and then of course they'd need more room for Hitler's enemies from all over Europe. Father and I were sent to Monowitz to work in one of the factories there, because, you see, even as they were building more barracks for prisoners, they were dismantling the machinery at the factories and sending it back to Germany so the Russians wouldn't capture it. They weren't thinking straight at all, but what could you expect from them? I suppose the businessmen at the factories knew the true story and were anxious to save their precious machines. These men and their businesses thrived on slave labor, just as the pharaohs had in Egypt when they used Jewish slaves to build their pyramids. Still, even the pharaohs hadn't attempted the destruction of an entire people. One of the first things you noticed in Auschwitz was the music. Bands of inmates were forced to play outside, as prisoners were marched to work or to their deaths. There was always music, happy marching songs, waltzes. Still, this music didn't inspire. This music mocked. Father and I were put in a barracks with 800 other men. 3 of us had to share one straw pallet. There wasn't room even to turn over. Quarantine had been a nightmare. We lay together all night on the cold floor, not an inch between bodies. At 4:30 a.m. they would beat us and kick us out into the freezing cold of the field outside. There we would stand, sometimes for 3 or 4 hours, until every single person, not just in our barracks, but in the entire camp, was counted. If you fell or tripped, you were whipped or shot. They had to make sure that not one inmate would escape the fate planned for him by the Germans. Not one. No one was allowed inside during the day. The sun blazed down on us, and we were desperate for water. But there was none to drink, only the midday soup, which was almost all water. We didn't even have our own bowls or spoons to eat with. 5 of us would have to share a bowl of soup, passing it from person to person, one sip for each until it was finished.